Hello and welcome to ACTV 20's Health Matters. I'm Dr. Erich Parks and I have a great guest today. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, food. And I hope it's one of your favorite subjects too. I'd like to introduce Kassy Clifford. She's I'm trying to remember, the integrative health coach, integrative nutrition health coach.
Yes.
And so she's going to give us a little bit of information about how we can eat better, how we can better our lives simply through choices that we make with foods. So welcome.
Thank you, Eric.
Glad to have you here, Kassy. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into the field of integrative health coaching.
Okay. So we have 6 children, and our oldest is 29, and when she was born, I had a culinary background, but was staying home to raise our kids at that point. So I wasn't working in the field, and she was vaccine injured at birth.
Oh.
And that caused me to really try to do some different things that we weren't looking at before.
Right.
And one was nutrition and how we can heal ourselves through the food that we eat versus just taking a pill to mask the symptoms.
Right. So that got you interested in looking in deeper into how food affects your internal environment and your external lifestyle and so forth.
Right. And having the culinary background, I always loved making foods and making foods taste good.
Right.
So when we were told by certain natural doctors that you need to cut out gluten and you need to, cut out processed foods, I was lost, and I was a chef, so it was a challenge for me to transition. And so now with doing integrative nutrition, as I've had many years to be able to perfect that.
29 years, wow. So is there a course that you would take, like a culinary school, or is there a nutrition course that helps you learn what you know?
Yes. So I attended the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, which is based in New York.
Okay.
It's the largest nutrition school in the world, actually.
Wow.
And it's worldwide, and it's done all online. I went back there for a weekend graduation, and they had a lot of doctors that taught us through the year. They were there speaking.
Wow, that sounds really exciting.
It was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, wow. So is this associated with a culinary school or another university?
No,
or?
Actually, it's not. It's mainly for people, ongoing education, a lot of doctors, chiropractors, people who are already in the medical field, but maybe in more functional integrative medicine. There are some chefs who go through the program.
Right. Well, to learn a little bit more everybody now, when you go to a restaurant, there's people that need, special attention to their diet, and so the better places that I've been to now have special menus or will help you with whatever needs that you have. So I think that's a really good avenue for chefs, but also for everybody to learn. So I'm excited for you, because I think this is Hippocrates himself said, make food thy medicine, and so we really can, assuming we're finding food with the nutritive values that we're looking for and what our bodies need, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about your journey here. So that was 29 years ago. You had this experience. When did you go through the school with the integrative nutrition?
I graduated 3 years ago.
Okay.
And before that, I started my journey, like I said, many years ago when my daughter was actually diagnosed at age 3. So I started the journey of we were told, go take her off gluten, but other than that, I didn't have a clue, other than going to the store and seeing a box that says gluten-free. So that's where I started, and then I started learning healing herbs and different nutrient-dense foods and so I learned how to take a recipe like Betty Crocker chocolate cake and substitute ingredients, and it was a long journey, and really it's ongoing. I'm learning about superfoods all the time that I can add and that are better than others.
Right. We'll be watching for Kassy Clifford's new book. She's going to tell you all about it. Actually, we'll come back to the nutrient-dense foods. I think that's something really exciting. But I first wanted to find out a little bit more about what do your clients typically come to you with? What sort of things are they looking for?
So most of my clients are women who are experiencing maybe in their late 30s, early 40s, typically, who are either having a problem losing weight, having hormone imbalances, and they want to know how they can change their diets to help that process. They've maybe been on a fad, 30-day cleanse or diet, and they had success with it, and they felt better, but they didn't know how to keep that going.
Yeah, kind of fall back into those patterns. Yeah.
Right.
So is that sort of typical in the American diet? I mean, are these people just real special small percentage, or is that a fairly large percentage of people that have these issues? I
think that it's very common. We've had processed foods around for 50 years now, and I think now we're starting to see the effects of it, and as great and life-saving as antibiotics have been in our lifetime, they've also done us a disservice in our guts. And that was one of the things that having a child with autism and lots of issues, lots of infections and things like that, the doctors were really quick to just write a prescription for antibiotics, which is causing all the problems in our gut to begin with. So
yeah, you bring up a really good point. I mean, because I've helped so many people with gut problems, it seems that really is the source of so many troubles that we have. So I would imagine, the typical person, and this is not meant disparagingly, but people want a quick fix. They want, which probiotic do I take? Which pill will make this better? And in reality, that very seldom ever fixes anything. So, you're looking at foods not only as a nutritional foundation, but also helping to heal the gut. So can you get a little bit of information on that? I mean, why is that important, and how do foods help the gut?
So 90% of our immune system is right there in our guts.
Yeah.
And so we have, there's a lot of environmental things and foods that have been damaging our guts and damaging the lining, which causes us to have leaky gut, which is very common.
You're talking about inflammatory agents like gluten or additives,
gluten,
MSG, all these.
Exactly, fake foods.
Fake foods.
And if you, I think there's becoming more of an awareness of this, but we still have a very long way to go.
Well, good. I totally agree with you. I think that there are some foods that can be very healing, but for specific reasons. We always tell people, sure, you can kill bacteria in your gut with antibiotics. You can put in some good bacteria, but what's the environment like? Does it support the good bacteria? Does it support the bad bacteria? If you don't change the environment, you're battling this constantly. So foods
we need to change the environment.
Foods can be foundational. So what sort of foods? Give us some examples of how foods can help change that environment so that those chronic problems can be resolved.
So many years ago, gluten, flour, wheat was okay for us to eat, but over the many decades, it's been so hybridized and so
genetically modified.
Genetically modified and just polluted. That I think that gluten for everybody, I don't think that it should be in anyone's diet. I think it's just a very inflammatory food, and it's hidden in a lot of things, and it doesn't exactly say gluten or wheat, so you just automatically think that it's not in there.
Right. Well, that's true. I had a person recently who we were trying to help with a gluten sensitivity, and they thought they would just eat Chinese food because there was no wheat. Well, the sauces are typically thickened with gluten, and they don't tell you that unless you ask, of course. But then they may not even know. But that was the reality of it. So once they stopped.
Soy is a big part of the Chinese diet, and that's it's just as inflammatory as
because of its genetically modified state. There are some countries that won't import foods that are genetically modified. Not some countries, but most countries.
Right.
I know rice is one of those that our whole economy might collapse if we tried to sell genetically modified rice to Asia, because they won't accept it.
Yeah.
So foods can create the environment for gut healing, and then once you have the gut healing, you can get the nutrition out of your food that is there.
Right.
Yeah.
If you make that environment for your body, it's gonna receive that.
Right. So there's a distinction between probiotics and prebiotics, and we try to help people understand that probiotics would be a part of a solution, but to keep that environment healthy for the right bacteria in the right circumstances, you have to have the prebiotics. So what are some examples of a prebiotic diet, or how people would get those foods? What are we looking for in those?
So we're looking for fermented foods.
Foods that have already been fermented.
Yes.
Yeah. Sauerkraut.
Certain starches are a really great prebiotic. Actually, green bananas can buy in a starch form, so you're not actually eating a green banana, but you can put the powder in your smoothie, or I cook a lot with potato starch.
Really? And that's a good prebiotic then?
It is, as long as it's not a genetically modified form. And it needs to be, I'm kind of a stickler on organic food and try to make it local. And but yeah, those are some good examples of prebiotics.
I happen to love sauerkraut, so I hope that I'm glad that that's one of the foods that help. Well, I notice what you do is you help people make decisions on their foods that will help them stay healthier. Is that the same as a dietitian, or is there differences in those professions? So
it's similar. Dietitians typically go with one specific diet, and the thing that I think that sets us apart, the integrative nutrition part, is I focus on the whole body. So I do focus a lot on nutrition, but I really hone in on bio-individuality, which is...
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it? Individuality.
Really? Yeah,
Same diet doesn't work for everybody.
Your diet may be my poison, and I think everybody is so different, and our bodies, our microbiome is different, and so whereas there's certain foods that I think nobody should be eating, nothing processed, nothing fake, and no gluten, but other than that, it's very individual. And
so,
I think with a dietitian or a nutritionist, they might focus more on a specific diet.
Right. Yeah, I've experienced that as well. So I think the individual approach is more representative of that integrative health care. Not just health coaches, but doctors and therapists are all getting aware of now. So that's really a good avenue to approach the individuality. Do you have a particular screening that you use for, let's say, if I came to you with skin problems or something, that you would say, well, let's find out, what you're doing, and What's
Sure.
your approach on that? How do you look at that?
Well, what I would first do is have you fill out a health history form, which is on my website.
Oh, okay.
And that will give you a good idea of, where a skeleton of what we're working with, as far as what you've been eating for the past 3 days, and how much water do you drink, and what kind of a job situation are you in, because that added stress can change the whole microbiome of your gut as well. So it's just as important.
So you have a survey that you use. Do you have people try certain things? I mean, is there a trial and error sort of approach to that, or how do you look at that?
So I pretty much put everybody on the same protocol in the very beginning,
right.
just to try to, hone in on what's really going on. And usually I will ask them, how much sleep are you getting? How much water are you drinking? What is your daily diet like? So all those things really, I find that most of my clients are not really on the best diet for them. They've been told, usually they're not eating enough good fats. They're confused about the carb ratio, and so I try to set that in the very beginning.
Yeah. Now you're right. That's a huge variability for people. Some people can tolerate carbohydrates, and some have to have very limited amounts. So that, of course, plays into as you were saying, the biome is the bacterial composition of the body, not just the gut, but on the skin, in your mouth, I mean, everywhere. So that can be affected by, like you say, certain foods, certainly, like you said, stress, hormonal changes, all these things influence that. So it's good that you have a starting point with that, and then people can come back, and we call that the empirical approach. Let's do this, see what your body does with that, and that way you can be very individual, as opposed to let's run $1,200 worth of tests and see, what antibiotic you need.
Exactly, and that's one thing that I really try to do is let's start with just the diet, and hopefully you get to the point where maybe 3 months later you maybe need to run some food allergy tests or a hormone test, but you don't have to start with all that, because maybe you can just figure it out in the very beginning.
Well, you're right. With a good survey and a good consultation, you can narrow it down quite a bit, and then it's just a matter of fine-tuning at that point. And it's so simple, people. It's really, really not rocket science. It's not. I shouldn't say it's real simple, because sometimes it can be complicated. But the procedure itself to get to that point isn't that hard. Because there are some general rules to follow. Now, you mentioned something a while ago, and I want to come back to that because I think this is critical. I've dealt with people who are on anti-cancer diets, and the phrase nutrient-dense foods comes up a lot, because we don't want to give people who are sick a lot of empty calories.
Exactly.
So tell us what nutrient-dense foods are and how they help us, or where we get them.
Sure. So there are a category of nutrient-dense foods called superfoods, and they are usually grown in their native environment. They are plants and seeds and nuts and things that were a regular part of our diet thousands of years ago,
Right.
that we've kind of gotten away from, and they are packed with the nutrients that our body runs. Ultimately, all of our bodies run very well if we're eating nutrient-dense foods. So an example of that would be an avocado or a MCT oil, which is a derivative of coconut oil. It's that you're taking the best fat out of the coconut oil, and
The ones that are easily absorbed and utilized by your body, yeah. Because not all of the fats are. I mean, some take a lot more energy to use. You want to give the body what is the easiest for it to be able to use as energy. So, and think about that. I mean, that's such an important point. When you eat food, your body has to expend energy to digest it. So the hope is that you're going to get more out of that than you've put in. If you're eating empty calories, right?
Right.
You have more energy expended in trying to deal with that food than you actually get out of it. So nutrient-dense foods really help to balance the scale so that your body's getting the most bang for the buck, I guess is the way I look at it.
Exactly. So if one of my clients comes to me and says, well, I had a salad, I might say, well, what kind of lettuce did you use? And so we would find a better choice if it was iceberg lettuce or, a not so nutrient-dense lettuce. We might say, how about adding kale or arugula or a more nutrient-dense, dark leafy green that has a lot more nutrients in it than just an iceberg lettuce.
So I know that there's recipes that help people find nutrient-dense foods and combine them. Is that something that you know about, or that you can tell people where to find references on that? Because
there's so many. I would say direct them to my website. First of all, it's CompleteHealthWithKassy.com, and I have lots of recipes. I do cooking classes on a regular basis.
Fabulous. And you explore things like nutrient-dense foods and recipes.
Everything I make, I try to pack the nutrients into. And so if you say, I want a birthday cake, but I want it to be nutrient dense, I will figure out a way to...
Can you live on that? I want to know.
You can.
Oh, good. We're going to talk. Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about some of your recipes. I see some food sitting in front of us, and I recognize sort of one of them. The other I don't. So give me a little update. What do we...
Well, I brought for you today a sample of my... they're sort of they're like a Reese's peanut butter cup.
Okay, I'm in.
They're called Fat Bomb Bars, and they're super nutrient dense. And so instead of using peanut butter, I used sunflower seed butter.
Okay.
I used a raw cacao, which is an unprocessed chocolate, and I added collagen powder, which is basically dried bone broth, but it's super nutrient dense. There's so many things that helps. Joints, skin, and the list goes on and on. These I never cook with sugar.
No sugar in it.
I think that sugar is probably the highest inflammatory food you can put in your body, and it's in pretty much everything. So I use a substitute of some unrefined sugars that are local, like local honey, a grade B maple syrup. Sometimes I use monk fruit, which is a zero glycemic natural sweetener. So anyway, these are for you guys.
Well, I must try one.
And then I brought some golden milk, which is pretty popular these days. It's got fresh turmeric in it, fresh ginger. It's very warming and soothing to the gut.
I imagine ginger is
very healing.
Warming.
Yeah, and I just brought the paste.
This is how you make the golden milk?
Yes, so the base is in here. There's chai spices, there's what else?
Cinnamon, cardamom.
MCT oil.
MCT oils, okay.
Cinnamon, cardamom, a specific type of cinnamon, Ceylon cinnamon,
right,
which is very high anti-inflammatory, sweetened with a little bit of local honey and fresh medjool organic dates. And we just use a little bit for sweetening, but medjool dates are also a superfood. So pretty much everything in there is considered a superfood.
And what is it dissolved in? What sort of
So what I did
base?
was you can blend it with any type of milk, but I used cashew milk. And cashew is very creamy. It's a very creamy nut. Makes a really nice base for sauces, any kind of nut milk, or anything that you would use for a cream sauce. Cashews is great, as a great addition. And then I just blended it with hot water. And
nice. So is the golden milk base, is that something that people can buy, or is it something that you have on your website, like a recipe?
I have the golden milk recipe on my website, and you can also buy it. I've seen it at local health food stores.
Really?
They sell it powdered and as a paste already. Of course, making it fresh, it's not going to last as long as a powdered, but it's all fresh ingredients, and as far as the nutrient value, it's going to be much higher.
And this would be consumed by somebody who's looking to improve what? Why would I use this?
Well,
Not just because it smells great and tastes good.
right. So it's basically a meal because you've added all those good fats. It can be considered breakfast. You've got the cashews in there; they're very filling with the MCT oil. It's very rich, yeah. But it's also everything in there is anti-inflammatory. So you're going to, if you're working on healing your gut, and so that you can just start. I just drink it every day because I love the taste.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I would too.
It's very warming in the winter time, but it's also just a healing food for anyone.
Well, that's a great recipe. I have a really good ability to pick out flavors, and the ginger is usually in these sorts of recipes too present, but this is really nice. It's just enough that gives it that warmth, but it's not overpowering. Beautiful, wonderful concoction there. I love it. So is this how your family eats, or is it just you, or is everybody on board? Tell me about that.
Everybody's on board. So it took a while for my family, especially since my older kids, they were teenagers when we started this process. Mm-hmm. And but I can say that, you know, they're being bombarded at school, and at my husband being working outside the home, and you know, eating out a lot. So I would say when they're at home, we're really good because we don't have any other options for them. But it is hard when their kids are going to school and they're getting candy as rewards in math class, and you know, a lot of times there's a birthday. It seems like every week where they're getting cupcakes. But I try to influence it a little bit by bringing it to the school when.
Well, and you're helping their palate develop affinity for what is good for them, because so many times we have so much salt and sugar and fat in our diet, and the wrong kinds, that it skews our taste. So when you are eating nutrient-dense foods like this, you know, I'm picking up flavors that are absolutely wonderful, unctuous, delicious, things that I really want to eat. I would recommend that if you want to improve your health, if you have any conditions that you're working with, if your family needs to improve their health, you notice that the kids are eating too much junk, or if you have issues, get a hold of Kassy. Find out about the recipes. How do you cook with this? It's not that hard. And can you tell us how to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So my website again is Complete Health with Kassy, spelled KASSY.com. I have. Did you want phone number?
Well, if you want people to contact you by phone, let them write it down.
That's fine. It's 916-813-0444. And I hold cooking classes regularly. I have a lot of group workshops where I'll take my clients and group them together, so there's some accountability, and we can, you know, have some educational time, and yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I'm hoping that you will contact Miss Kassy here to get your information, help your health. You owe it to yourself. Thank you for watching Health Matters. I'll be back.